about the need for masculine initiation. And this is what keep people separated, like we spoke about earlier, from between the macho man divided and between that weak, ineffectual man. They're both overcompensating sides of masculinity. So we need both. We need it all, but we don't have it all. Because we're either not loved, like the very often that the shy, withdrawn, quiet man whose desires he can't even express them, even make him conscious. The father didn't love him very often. Partly that was me as well. But then you have the other one, it's like tough, strong. Think Ernest Hemingway, think Theodore Roosevelt. I'm going to talk about these two men. I've spoken about these two men at length. Because here we talk about initiation into being a warrior. And they've taken that ability that their father did show him. The father was with them. Maybe there was not much baseline of love. They were not accepted for who they are. But they said, oh, I am a man because my father was hunting with me, boxing with me. He showed me how to do these manly things. So that's my identity now. But they're pushing it because they want to make up for that. They don't feel good enough about themselves. Hemingway, huge gender confusion. Huge, absolutely. And his father also, yes, his father did spend time with him, but he was very harsh in terms of he had to meet the standards when he was teaching him things. And he didn't accept his love for literature. Isn't that a joke? Because Hemingway is this huge, like one of the greatest writers. And his father, that's one thing that his father wouldn't accept about him. I guess he was afraid because of that tenderness that comes with feeling and writing. And no, he wanted him to be a man's man. Which, ironically, he still would have been, because his father spent time with him. But look what a bullying, what a bullish personality. It's just a joke. It's ugly, especially in someone in his late life. This is, if you're a teenager, okay, maybe you still have time to change. But when you're 50 and you still behave like that, it's just so ugly, and it's sad, because you can be giving good things to people. You can be a pillar of strength. Theodore Roosevelt, when his father was teaching him things, when Theodore was little, he had some sort of illness, sickness. He was a very sickly child. In other words, he had a weak body, and his father said to him, just like my father said to me, "You're not made for this." And then I went on to make myself for this, good enough for this, and I could have gotten in huge trouble, arrested, in prison, dead. So Theodore Roosevelt, in the same way, his father said to him, "Theodore, you have the mind, but you do not have the body." What a verdict on that. Instead of saying things like, "I must help you become stronger," and not judging the father. Who knows what I would have done or said, especially in those days. We're talking a long time ago, when life was a lot more harsher reality. You need to be strong in every way that you can as a man, just to go through life normally, let alone accomplish anything. And Theodore said as a response, "I will make my body." And he did. He became this athlete, outdoorsman, boxing, whatever. But it was out of proportion, because he didn't accept that little child, because he couldn't, even later in life. Because we can't make the unconscious conscious. There are very few people who can. Now, we live in this wonderful world where that's possible, but then it's like, yeah, good luck. Some people still did, obviously, but it was a lot harder, shall we say. He couldn't just go to therapy and talk to his therapist. And even if he did, like many people do now, these are deeper things than many therapists would even know about. I'm not claiming that I will make a better therapist, don't hear me wrong, but it's just then, from what I've seen, that's the nature of reality. These are deepest things that have the potential to be completely life-changing, but very few lives have been completely turned around and changed by therapy. They have, over time, but sometimes, in my experience with men, it's like this masculinity focus is just still, people get better from things, but very rarely do they rediscover their whole destiny. It's what I'm saying, and this is what I'm discussing here. So Theodore Roosevelt, after his father said, you don't have the body, you have the mind, but not the body, he said, "I will make my body." And he went on to prove, I guess, to himself that he would never be weak. He hated weakness, obviously. He was a great man in many ways. He achieved so much, my goodness, about conservation. He was one of the greatest presidents. So I'm not judging him, but I'm just dissecting his personality a little bit to see what made him that macho figure that was a little bit kind of stupid and out of proportion, like Ernest Hemingway. Probably better in terms of less of a bully, maybe. I don't know. But we can see how he took his masculinity out of proportion. I will never be weak. And when he was 50 or 51, something like that, he was sparring with his military aide in the White House. He got so hit so hard by this younger, stronger guy. Presumably he was stronger, he was the younger guy. And he lost the eyesight in one of his eyes. What a shame. What a shame for a man in his 50s who is a president to not be able to protect himself at all, to not look after himself. And because you have one body, you have one mind, you give blessings to the world through this. You don't take it seriously. You're still being a little boy running around, a teenager rather, trying to prove yourself how strong you are. Look. So he lost, and only then did he stop boxing. And then he turned into jiu-jitsu or wrestling. And it's like, obviously I'm not diminishing boxing. And I mean, I do a little bit. There's an element of that I always will do, like punch back, a bit of, sparring, things like that. Just to stay sharp. Boxing is like, wow. I mean, I think every man should know how to throw a punch. Perhaps maybe take a punch as well. Because it's useful, shall we say. And also gives you this confidence, quiet confidence that, yeah, I've been there, I can do that. But look how extreme Theodore Roosevelt was. So we looked at Hemingway, he's extreme because he wanted to prove to himself, to his father perhaps, that he was lovable, to himself that he, despite this deep gender confusion and this feeling of probably not being loved, doesn't belong in his own body, probably. I will be the man that I saw my father was. And with Roosevelt, it's like, I will never be weak. And from out of these vows comes that drivenness. And Hemingway just drove himself to death. Many times he tried to die. Subconsciously or consciously, he tried to die. And then he did it consciously. Very often it's internalized and then it manifests out in the world. So these are two men from popular culture, Roosevelt and Hemingway, that were undisputedly warriors. Boxing, hunting, wars. So you can't doubt that they're fighters, they're warriors, but you doubt their souls, their hearts, their ability to feel. Does it mean that being a warrior is bad? Well, according to much of the world today, yes it does. I don't want to be like this toxic man. I think that being a warrior is a genuine part of masculinity. But the problem is that they lack the other parts, and so that's all they've got. And that's why it's caricature, it's ugly. But then, here and there are glimpses of this being put in its proper place.